So, well, thank you, Jose, for this introduction, and welcome everyone, all the audience, to today's presentation on the exciting EUCC, the EUCC Common Criteria-Based Scheme. I'm sure that you have heard a lot about it. Okay, so let me check. Okay, so let's dive right into our topic. So, today's presentation, we will be exploring the differences between the CCRA SOG-IS schemes, also known as the National Scheme on Common Criteria, and the new EUCC scheme. Okay, so if you're a manufacturer, this presentation can help you to understand a little bit how close is your product or your organization to meet the EUCC requirements. But also it can be a very interesting for stakeholders that are also involved in the certification landscape, because we are going to provide insights and things that needs to be maybe improved or that are still to be defined. So the presentation, it's basically divided in 3 blocks. The first block, we are already there, so we are going to explain a little bit the scope of the presentation, and we will talk about what remains the same. Okay, there's a new scheme, but there's still some things that remain. In the second block, we will going to see the context and highlights. We are going to put a little bit of context of the EUCC, timelines, stakeholders in the EUCC scheme. And in the third block, maybe the most important one, we are going to make a journey on all the key points and differences between the former schemes with SOG-IS and CCRA and the new EUCC. Okay, so let's move. So rather than focusing on the differences right away, one can think, okay, the EUCC, it's new, but what stays the same? Well, I have to say that there is still considerable reuse compared with the former scheme. And here we will list all the topics that will remain the same, or are still the same. On the first topic, it's the scope. So the EUCC applies to all the ICT products and protection profiles. This is exactly the same scope that we had before with the common criteria as former schemes with CCRA and SOG-IS. As a spoiler, the core of the EUCC is still the common criteria. So the evaluation methodology remains the same. Even though there were some changes lately, it was not because of the EUCC, it's because there is a new version of the common criteria, 2022, which is somehow merged in the process of the EUCC adoption. Additionally, we are still on a third-party assessment scenario. That means that you will find certification bodies, you will find laboratories, also known as ITSEF. So these stakeholders are the same, but we will see later that there is some new stakeholders, and also the conditions of the CVs at this point, they are also changed a little bit. And finally, you will see that, especially if you are used to high assurance products, you will see that documents, technical domains, and protection profiles from SOG-IS are already in place for EUCC scheme, so they are reused. All the work made there is reused for the EUCC scheme as well. So let's try to put a little bit of context and see where the EUCC comes from. Well, the EUCC scheme originates from the Cybersecurity Act, the CSA. This is officially known as the Regulation 2019-881 and entry into force in June 2019. So this regulation established a unified framework for cybersecurity certification across Europe. Mainly, it sets the rules to create new schemes and have harmonization and facilitate a single digital market within the UE. Okay, the EUCC scheme was one of the first candidate scheme that was developed under the CSA. okay? And is specifically focused on certifying the ICT products, okay? The EUCC aims to harmonize the approach of security certification and reducing fragmentation and ensuring a consistent level across the region, across the UE. Additionally, the CSA, you will find that it defines 3 different levels: basic, substantial, and high. Well, the basic level, which is usually reserved for self-assessment, it's not covered in the EUCC, so it's not possible to do self-assessment in EUCC. And there's a clear mapping between common criteria and these CSA levels. In common criteria, when I say common criteria, I say the ABABAN level component. That means that ABABAN 1 and ABABAN 2 will be mapped to a substantial level, while ABABAN 3 to ABABAN 5 will be mapped to a high level, okay? So we are going to see now what are the stakeholders in the EUCC scheme, okay? We had this stakeholder already. So the National Accreditation Body, it's the entity that conducts the accreditation for the CVs and itself under ISO 65 and ISO 1725. Additionally, some extra requirements from the EUCC are also an input for the accreditation of the other entities like itself and CVs. But let's say that this we had already this entity before, so this is not really a change. What it is really a change is the National Cybersecurity Certification Authority. This authority works as a supervision and monitoring authority and also conducts authorizations for high assurance levels. Do you remember that we saw the CSA levels? So the high assurance need to be also authorized by the NCCA. And we said before that we still have CVs, certification bodies, and itself, and the certification body perform the certification activities among other activities that we are going to see in the next slides. And itself also performs these evaluation activities, and there is no much change here. There is a slight change on the conditions to become a certification body, because in the former schemes, in the SOG-IS CCRA scheme, we had only public CVs, but now is it possible to have private CVs? So commercial CVs can also act as certification body as far as they accredited according to the requirements of the EUCC and the ISO 65, okay? The high level of CSA is usually reserved for public CVs, while substantial level can be performed by the private certification bodies. So, what are the timelines? Well, the thing is that the EUCC is already a reality. We have different different dates that we need to take into account. The first date is when EUCC entry into force, which was on February 2024. And there is 1 year where you can start, or where the two schemes are coexisting. So you can start an evaluation using national common criteria schemes, but you can start, as far as the infrastructure is ready, also with evaluation with the EUCC scheme. Okay, there is this period where they are coexisting these two schemes. Okay, but after 1 year, so it means that in 2025, in February, it will be not possible to start an evaluation using the former SOG-IS schemes. Okay, the national common criteria scheme. So it will be mandatory to start an evaluation with the EUCC scheme. And there is another deadline that you should take into account. If you are already on the way of performing an evaluation using the former schemes, you need to know that you need to finish these projects before February 2026. It is important to note that this EUCC scheme, it's now a voluntary scheme. But as you will see before, and my colleague Jose Pulido will tell you much more about it, other regulations like CCRA, the Cyber Resilience Act, may mandate that the EUCC will be obligatory, okay? So all the member states will cease the national common criteria schemes, so they need to end the participation on the CCRA. Additionally, in high assurance domains, you will see that smart card and similar devices and hardware security boxes remain exactly the same. So in the implementing act, in the EUCC implementing act, you will see that there will be some state-of-the-art documents that you need to follow in the evaluations. And they are defined by the moment the two different technical domains that we had before in the common criteria schemes, okay? The smart card and similar devices and hardware security boxes then remain the same. So let's go deeper on analyzing the main differences and the key points between both schemes. So here you can see a roulette of all the topics that we'll be covering today. We will go slightly summarizing all the topics, but we hope that you will have a clear view on what are the key differences between these two schemes. First of all, we're going to start with the new obligations. So the Implementing Act is explaining that applicants should provide the intended usage of the product, but also to provide a risk analysis, okay? This is because the CAP needs to evaluate the suitability of the assurance level selected. Well, even though there is a new specific paragraph on this is usually already performed in the common criteria evaluations during the SCA security assurance requirements, okay? Additionally, very important point regarding the obligations, you should take into account 3 different articles. Article 9 that contains the general commitments and obligations from the manufacturer, the information that needs to be available by the holder of the certificate, which is Article 31, and monitoring activities obligations, okay? So if we go to the first one, the general commitments and obligations, in Article 9, you will find things like not promote ICT product as being certified only with respect to the scope, to put only in the market the product that is certified and do not promote the one that is not certified and so on. So let's say that there are general obligations that you need to comply, okay? Additionally, another difference is the information that should be available by the holder of the certificate. So this is related to Article 55 of the CSA. The Article 41 of the EUCC Implementing Act explains that you need to provide supplementary cybersecurity information. We will see later an example of what this article explains. And additionally, we need to have, there is an obligation of informing about detected vulnerabilities or irregularities concerning the security of the certified ICT product. And this is placed, you will find it in Article 27 of the EUCC Implementing Act. So you may think, okay, what happened if I break something? So I'm not following one of these obligations. Well, if some non-compliance is detected, then it is set a remedial action period of 30 days. So that means that you need to provide an action to solve the non-compliance. And if not proposed, your certificate is in risk because it will be suspended or withdrawal. Of course, if there is continued or not on recurring non-compliance, then it would lead to the withdrawal of the certificate. So if we go in more detail on what is the supplementary cybersecurity information and what are the monitoring obligatory rules from the EUCC scheme, you can find something like the list that you see here in the screen, okay? So the new things that you should provide, it's, for example, the period during which security support will be offered to the end users, okay? Additionally, there should be a reference on online repositories listing publicly disclosed vulnerabilities related to the ICT product. You will see that this is strictly related to the monitoring activities, and we will cover this in a different slide to have more insights on this. Additionally, if you want to check the list of the monitoring activities by the holder of the certificate, you can find obligations like the ones that you see in the screen. So you need to monitor vulnerability information regarding the ICT product, regardless the source where it comes from. So it can come from a third party, it can come from internal research, etc. So that means that you have some rules in place that you need to comply with. What about the scope reduction? Well, there's a paragraph in the EUCC Implementing Act where it explains that where the scope of existing EUCC certificate is reduced, the certificate shall be withdrawn and a new certificate with a new scope should be issued, okay? This is something new that it's there, but this is basically to ensure that everyone has the same understanding on the scope of the certificate, and if the scope change, everyone knows about it. One important point is the state-of-the-art documents, okay? The state-of-the-art documents are documents that are, let's say, defining the evaluation methods, the tools, the security requirements for accreditations, etc. Okay, so there's that documents that should be followed. You should be up to date checking this document, and you can find it in the link that I put you here just in the bottom of the slide. But if you check EUCC scheme state-of-the-art, you will be redirected to the webpage right away. So you will find two kinds of documents, the state-of-the-art documents, which are mandatory. And nowadays, there's only the accreditation requirements for conformity assessment bodies. But also you can find the state-of-the-art of smart card and similar devices and hardware security boxes. These last two, the state-of-the-art of the technical domains, you will see that they are reusing all the work already performed in the SOG-IS. On the other hand, there exist guidance documents that are non-mandatory, and currently you can find in the web page the authorization of CAPs, so the process to authorize the CAPs, and the SOG-IS agreed cryptographic mechanism. A very frequently asked question: is there any mutual recognition? As you know, CCRA include 31 countries that were recognizing common criteria certificates. Well, the question is not by the moment, and maybe my colleague Javier Tallón can provide you more insight and more updates in here. But the good news is that the non-EU countries can recognize the EUCC certification provided they meet some criteria. Okay, why? Because there's some differences between the former scheme and the new EUCC scheme. Because, for example, private CAPs are not considered outside the EUCC, the compliance responsibility and penalties are not required outside EUCC. So these changes needs to be somehow addressed. And that's why ENISA and NIAP, for example, committed to work together to harmonize these changes and make a new mutual recognition agreement. Maybe later on we can talk more about it. Protection profiles, that was also a hot topic. Well, there is small changes on how the protection profiles, about the protection profile rules. First of all, they should be certified only by public bodies and also developed as a state-of-the-art documents and should be endorsed by the European Cybersecurity Certification Group, okay? So you can see in Annex 2 and Annex 3, the protection profiles certified at our level 4-5 and the recommended PPs, but do not expect to find NIAP PPs, but just SOG-IS PPs, okay? It does not mean that you cannot claim to NIAP PP and so on, but it means that you need to do the evaluation, all the evaluation of the SE class complete, okay? At the end, it's not that much work, but we need to know that this is not recognized. Okay, what about ABABAN 4 and ABABAN 5 assurance level? Well, the certification at ABABAN 4 and ABABAN 5, it's reserved for scenarios that will ensure high assurance level due to the criticality nature of the ICT products, okay? So these kind of levels will only be possible in the next scenarios, where the ICT product is covered by any technical domain, that it's listed already in the Annex 1. Remember that we talk about the smart card and similar devices and hardware security boxes. And 2, when the ICT product falls into the category of the products covered by a certified protection profile that includes around 4 and 5 levels. And they have been listed, of course, at a state-of-the-art protection profile, okay? Any other exception needs to be approved by the NCCA, but these are the, let's say, the common rules to follow. You need to consider that in the implementing act, you will see a lot of references and documentation regarding ABABAN 4 and 5, but a high level also considers ABABAN 3, okay? But for this kind of levels, we don't have that much information than for the highest levels of the CSA. Okay, another key difference is what are the obligations of the monitoring process, what we call the vulnerability handling process. This shall be established for assurance continuity. What does it mean? Well, it means that when the product goes to the market, it will be some surveillance in the market. That means that the authorities will be monitoring at least 4% of the certified products in order to check that the obligations and the requirements from the EUCC are still accomplished by these products, okay? So what do you need to know to implement this vulnerability handling process? First of all, you need to have a vulnerability management procedures, okay? You need to have some procedures in order to follow when there is a vulnerability coming up. You need to establish also the vulnerability reception methods. That means that you need to have contact points, you need to have ways to provide you information from outside, from third parties, to receive information about vulnerabilities of your product, that you can then analyze and check whether it's critical, not critical, and evaluate its impact. You need to record the vulnerabilities and carry out a vulnerability assessment. That means that you need to analyze the impact of that vulnerability and record all them, as well as the actions that you take. And a very important point is to inform the dependent certificate holders. As you know, there are a lot of products that are based on a composite evaluation, meaning that a vulnerability on lower levels, for example, of this product can affect upper levels of the other products that it can depend on the certificate. For example, if we have a composite product of an IC, you have on top an operating system, you have on top an application. So that means that if you have a vulnerability on one of these levels, you need to inform the dependent companies that are providing these other components for the product, okay? So everyone can make a correct vulnerability assessment on all the components independently if there is a specific product or a composite product. Here we show an example, and this is just an example of the flow that you may follow if a vulnerability is disclosed by the manufacturer or the vendor. So the first point is where the vulnerability is determined, so it's discovered by the vendor or by a third party. So you need to collect all the information, including the scope and impact. You need to create a report, evaluate the impact, and here we recommend to use the common tools to evaluate the impact of the vulnerabilities, such as the attack potential, and check the scope of the certificate and the assurance components to be sure that this vulnerability is inside of the scope of these assurance components. You need to set and determine a time frame for the remediation, check the composite products, as we said. You need to warn authorities and then make the public disclosure of this vulnerability. The EUCC, it's defining or it's listing some standards that you can follow. For example, the standard 19147 or the ISO-EC 30111, which is for vulnerability management itself. You can follow these standards, and it can really help you to guide you on the process to make a correct process procedures for vulnerability management. A topic which is quite related to the vulnerability management process is the patch management. Okay, what is the patch management? Well, a patch means a process or a technical mechanism that you can provide to the products to the field in order to update their firmware, software, and so on. So what is a patch management composed of? Well, the patch management is composed of the process of development and release of the patch, so the patch itself, and the technical mechanisms and functions for the adoption of the patch into the ICT product. Maybe we'll have authentication mechanisms in order to, or access control in order to deploy this patch on the ICT products, and the set of evaluation activities that will evaluate this effectiveness and performance of these technical mechanisms. Okay. So there are different scenarios where the patch management can be applied. The patch management, it's something, it's not obligatory. That means that you may include the patch management in the scope of evaluation, okay? And if this, if the certification included in the scope, the certification of the patch management procedure, then there are several scenarios where you can apply this patch into the products field. The first scenario would be the where the functionalities affected by the patch resides outside of the TOE, of the certified ICT product. Then it is expected that you report this to the certification body, and hopefully, if the analysis is correct and the functionalities affected are outside of the TOE, then the certificate will be remain in change. The second scenario is if the patch relates to a predetermined minor change, okay, to the certified product. Then you need to submit the patch to the lab, to the ITSEF. Of course, the lab will do their work, they will analyze the impact, and they will pass it through the CB. And in the third scenario, the patch relates to a confirmed vulnerability with critical effects on the security. In that particular case, you need to submit the patch to the ITSEF, but also you can deploy in parallel the patch in the ICT product, okay? And this should be performed in 5 working days. Another frequently asked question is, well, I am obligated to include a mark. I'm sure that you have seen this EUCC mark on several pages. Well, the EUCC states that you can affix, it's voluntary to affix the mark and label in your ICT product, okay? But there is some rules, in case that you are affixing it, there is some rules that you need to follow, and you can find these rules in Article 11 and the Annex 9 that you see just right here after. And finally, we will go through what's next and checking all the things that are still ongoing or we need to see all the evolution. And this can be also a prelude to Javier Tallón and Jose final speech. So what is expected from now on? Well, we are expecting to have maintenance of EUCC documents. There's quite a lot of EUCC documents that have been in the state-of-the-art that needs to be maintained. And this is a work that it's already ongoing, but we will need to have some guidance. Where do we need to have this guidance? As I said before, there's quite a lot of documentation related to highest level. But in order to have an harmonized framework, it's also, under our point of view, it's also needed to have some guidance on ABA 3, but also substantial level. Remember that ABA 3 is still a high assurance level according to CSA. It is very important to know the role of EUCC in other regulations. So the interplay with other regulations needs to be followed, and in order to check the interplay between these regulations, such as CCRA, we will see this later, but also to harmonize the global efforts. We need monitoring guidance. We know that they are working on it, but all the monitoring process, it's quite new for all the stakeholders, and we will need to have really good guidance to see that we are all defining the same kind of vulnerabilities, the same monitoring process, etc. And additionally, a frequently asked question is the site recognition. So how the sites will be recognized. The stars will be recognized, not which will be the validity. And maybe this is something that we can address after all. So this is all for my presentation. Thank you for all the audience to be here. And hopefully that you have clear view now with the key differences between the former scheme and the new scheme that it's a reality.